Jeez. Wow. This is still the same recording session as last time, but Jesus. Emma really did commit murder, even if it was by accident. Oh, God. Sorry, Edgeworth. I didn't mean to get you in trouble. Don't worry about it. This is my problem, not yours. Hope I'm not interrupting anything, pals. Oh, guess I am. I'll come back later. Try the veal. Wait, Detective Gumshoe, what is it? Again. Got a lot of nerve, pal, make a detective run around while on duty. And to top it all off, you call me here? I've seen happier people at funerals. Isn't that exactly what happened last time? I take it Lana's having you run errands again? Let me tell you, this is the last time, pal! Here, she asked me to give this to you if there was a break in today's trial. Evidence law? Edward was talking about this the other day. You must know the 2 rules of evidence law. No evidence shall be shown without the approval of the police department. Yeah, and the second one is that, you know, something. The chief prosecutor wanted me to give you a message. Message? She said, if you're planning to take him on, you're going to need this book. Him. I guess I'll need to give this book a thorough read. Okay. Let's actually read that, though. Doesn't look like the book will do you any good now, though. But will it, though? No evidence shall be shown without the approval of the police department, and unregistered evidence presented must be relevant to the case on trial. Yeah. So, Rule 1, no evidence without the approval. Rule 2, unregistered evidence has to be related to the case. All that's left now is the chief prosecutor's sentence. That's where you're wrong, detective. Huh? Haven't you figured it out yet? While I'm still sitting in that prosecutor's seat? Despite all these allegations being thrown at me? Mr. Edgeworth! The real trial today hasn't begun yet. What? What else is there left to do? Your credibility has all been but ruined with this forged evidence you were unaware of. Emma Skye finding out that she unwittingly caused a man's death. And now, you're telling me that you want to do more? You gotta be kidding me, pal! You're missing the point, detective. Lana didn't murder Detective Goodman. She merely stuck a knife into his body. That means the real killer is still out there. What? And we're going to expose him, no matter what it takes. This case has hurt too many people. It's time to bring it to an end. I mean, hopefully we do so without there being like a second thing. Why are the people still here? The courts will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Skye. With regards to the crowd not going absolutely freaking mental. Mr. Edgeworth? Yes, Your Honor? The inquiry committee is planning to impose harsh penalties for your actions. Thank you for the news, Your Honor. Yes, well, normally this is where the prosecution calls forth a witness. But, cough, cough. This isn't easy to say. You see, there is some concern that you, Mr. Edgeworth, may have, struck a bargain? Oh, God. What? You think I may have manipulated the witnesses? I didn't say that. It's just, you see, everyone has been talking and... Very well, Your Honor. I have a solution. A solution? That being the case, the prosecution will allow the defense to call forth all further witnesses. What? But there's no precedent for what you're proposing. Undeniably, this is an unusual arrangement, but a very effective one. It would prove that I haven't struck any deals with any witnesses. Well, Mr. Wright, what do you say? Unbelievable. Yeah, we got the power now, son. Edgeworth has found a way to continue the trial. Very well. The defense accepts the prosecution's proposal. Then it's settled. The defense may now call forth the next witness. Mr. Wright? You do realize this is your last chance. If you call the wrong witness, this trial is as good as over. The defense calls... Oh, God, another one. Aw, shit, buddy. Time's finally come to bring out the real murderer. Yeah, no, there really can only be, like, one freaking person. It was the dead guy all along! No. Damon Gant. The defense calls Damon Gant to the stand. Damon Gant? What does he have to do with anything? As the defendant's partner 2 years ago, Mr. Gant has first-hand knowledge of the crime. I feel we should hear what he has to say about it. As luck would have it, he should still be in the courthouse. He would also be least likely to have been manipulated by me in any way. Wouldn't you agree, Your Honor? True. All right, bailiff, please escort Mr. Gant to the stand. We're finally gonna get something out of this asshole. Witness, please state your name and occupation. What is this, some kind of practical joke? I was just on my way to lunch. Your name and occupation, sir. Worthy, are you sure you want to do this? Your name and occupation. So, you want to play hardball, eh? But please, Mr. Gant. Fine. My name is Damon Gant. I'm the acting chief of police. Now then, Chief Gant, the court requests to hear your testimony. Oh, righto. What's with the grim face? First, let's clear up this SL9 incident. Oh, you mean that time when Lana's sister murdered that prosecutor? Personally, I think it's been made pretty clear already. There are still some things unaccounted for. Oh? Like what? Like the role you played in all this. Son, either you're very brave or very foolish. You are aware, of course, that a police chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal? Weapons? Sure. Take my testimony, for example. I don't have to give it if I don't want to. Oh, God, what? Is that true? I'm afraid so. The chief of police has the right to refuse to testify. Of course, such an action carries it with it certain risks. Don't worry. I'm not here to hinder your trial. Just remember, if this turns out to be a big waste of time, don't say I didn't warn you. Very well. The witness may now begin his testimony. Okay, you butt. As I recall, Neil and I were in the christening room that day. To make a long story short, we slipped up. That power outage didn't help either. When I went into my office, I found Lana there. Apparently, she had already arranged the crime scene. Yeah, on your orders, buddy. As you can see, I had nothing to do with the forgery. Really? Is that when Doc was arrested? He was lying on the floor unconscious. Jesus. When Emma sent Neil flying, It seems Doc bumped his head. I see. Everything seems pretty clear-cut. If the police chief has the right to refuse to testify, then I better hit him hard and fast. This could be another case where, because this has only ever come up this one time, but if I'm going to press him for any information, I might as well just, you know, save this whole thing. Oh god, my eye. As I recall, there was a ceremony held at the police department that day. Yes, that's right. I guess you could say I'm a workaholic. After winning his award, Neil was all fired up, too. That's probably what spooked Doc and made him run away like that. Was the defendant, Lana Skye, also present in the room? I don't quite remember. At the very least, she wasn't there when Doc ran for it. To make a long story short, we slipped out the power outage, didn't help either. So, the two of you ran immediately after him, right? That's right, but Doc made it to the elevator first. So Neil and I split up. He went upstairs and I went downstairs. I guess you could say he got lucky. Was this about a power outage? Oh, that. The elevator stopped all of a sudden, and I got the shock of my life. Well, probably not as shocked as Neil was when that knife went into his heart, though. That's not funny. How can he say that so casually? Could you tell us what you saw? It was a shocking sight. Neil and that serial killer were lying in a heap on the floor, all tangled together. Doc was also lying collapsed on the floor. Yes, apparently he hit his head when he was knocked out. Or Andy was knocked out, actually. Next to them were those two poor girls. Lana and Emma. Lana was cradling Emma in her arms. Looking back at it now, she must have already known what her sister had done. Oh, Jesus. She really is smart. Apparently she had already arranged the crime scene, huh? Yeah, but on what grounds? How can you know that? Because of the victim's body. It had already been moved. So that means you found the body near Lana's desk? That's right. I think you said earlier it was my suit of armor that really stabbed the prosecutor? Yes. Anyway, as you can see, it had nothing to do with the forgery, huh? So you're saying that the forgery that already taken place by the time you arrived in your office? That's exactly what I'm saying. I can understand how Lana must have felt. But moving a body and hiding evidence are inexcusable no matter what the circumstances. Is that how it really went down? Staring at the witness won't do you any good, Mr. Wright. If you're going to stare at anything, you better start off by staring at the court record. Worthy, always the smooth talker. But which piece of evidence ties Gant to the forgery? Lana did admit to forging the evidence, but that can't be the whole truth. Somehow I got to link Gant to the incident. Okay, then what do we have? Because we already looked at these. Like, we could potentially show him the rules of this. Because, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, unregistered evidence presented must be relevant to the case on trial. And no evidence shall be shown without the approval of the police department. Yeah, nothing to do with the forgery. Could it be that cloth, though? Because that hasn't come up. That hasn't really come up yet in the case, in this trial yet. So I'm thinking it's either the evidence law book or, you know, the piece of cloth. thinking. Or it could very well just be the picture. I don't know what to... Yeah, I'm thinking it might be the piece of cloth. I think it might be the piece of cloth. No. I don't think that would have made sense, because that bears... No, wait! Wait a second. Yeah, no. As I recall, Neil and I were requesting him that day. To make a long story short, we slipped up. Went to the office, Lana wasn't there. Apparently she had arranged the crime scene. As you can see, he had nothing to do with the forgery, huh? You know, like, it's gotta be the jar. It's gotta be the jar, because, like, that was in the office. That was in the office. That was in the office. Like, yeah. No. Yes. You claim you had nothing to do with the forgery. But I'm afraid that is a claim you cannot back up. Explain yourself. Several pieces of evidence were found in your office. Take this jar, for example. That's the blue badger you showed us earlier. A piece of this jar was discovered in your safe. Not only that, but the evidence list I presented earlier was actually found inside your desk. It was found where? You see, Chief Gant, these articles of evidence uncovered in your office are both concrete proof that you played a part in the illegal investigation. Chief Gant, what is the meaning of this? Oh, here's a defense attorney who may even rival Worthy. So you admit to it then, that you were involved in the forgery? Who, me? Or do you mean you? Me? What would I have anything to do with that? Well, you were the one who stuck into my office when you found this evidence. That's right, I did. Prosecutors aren't the only ones capable of forging evidence, you know. Defense attorneys can do so too. Isn't that right, Righto? Yeah, let's go, Worthy. However, Detective Gumshoe was present during the investigation. Worthy, my boy. Not even detectives are exempt from the law. Rest assured, Dick will receive his due punishment. What? What? If Detective Gumshoe drops any further, he'll end up paying to work. Yes, well, in light of the detective's presence, please give us your testimony regarding these pieces of evidence you found in your office and their relation to the forgery that took place at the crime scene. My. Kids these days no longer know how to put two and two together. You are seriously good at telling us that you did it. Let's see, what was it now? A jog fragment and a list? For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when these pieces of evidence were discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way. Really? Really? Mr. Wright? Yes, Your Honor? When investigating the crime scene, you should have been more careful to observe protocol. You do understand that I am the chief of police, right? There will be consequences. Indeed, I believe I will press charges, so you won't make that same mistake again. My apologies, Chief. Would you mind waiting until tomorrow for that? Today is, well, you know. All right, Udgy. In return, though, I know that place, right? Huh? Were those two guys telepathic? Jesus, even we are facing jail time, probably. Oh, man. All right. Let's see what we got. I'd appreciate it if you stop making these ridiculous allegations. Yes, you do have a point. You wouldn't have the guts to do something like that. What? I'll have you know, back in the day, I once broke into a cattle ranch and tipped... Mr. Wright, what are you saying? Anyway, you can't prove that you didn't carry the evidence, can you? If you have proof to the contrary, you're going to need it later. Later? What are you talking about? What else? I'm talking about when Raito's prints were found. Yes, if they were found inside my safe, that would prove his investigation was illegal. I never faced anyone as slimy as this guy. Anyway, you can't prove when these pieces of evidence were discovered. Yeah, they were in your office, dude. What do you mean by that? This is all purely hypothetical, of course. But suppose I did place those items in my safe. Such an act wouldn't necessarily constitute forgery. If concealing evidence at a crime scene isn't forgery... I'm not through speaking yet, Raito. It all depends on when the evidence was discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless, huh? Are you saying this jar fragment wasn't discovered in the initial investigation? It would appear not. After all, it wasn't listed in the evidence list. For all we know, it could have been suddenly materialized the day after Dark was sentenced. Uh-huh. Oh, and wouldn't that be convenient? Right? The chief is talking about a possibility, so long as you can't rule that out. Your remarks, however clever they may be, will only succeed in wasting time. Tell me something I don't know. Come now, Raito. Think about it. There's no reason you participate. Really? No reason, huh? Can you look me in the eye and say that? Because I'm innocent. Remember? Who was it that murdered Neil? I'm not sure if I care for the word murder here. But in the end, the person responsible for Mr. Marshall's unfortunate demise was Emma Skye. Well, now do you see? Rearranging a crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way at all. Do you really think that? At the very least, there's one very large benefit you would have reaped from all this. Oh? I wasn't aware. What is this benefit? That would, of course, be the position that you have. The chief of police. Yeah, because after the murder took place and the sentence, Gant rose to the top, became chief. And Lana became chief prosecutor. The resolution of the SL9 incident secured her promotion to chief. That in itself is sufficient motive. Oh, that's a good one. Huh? Do you really think that I'm really that incompetent? What do you mean? Even without that case, I was already in line to become the next chief. The resolution of SL9 merely sped up the inevitable a little. Is that true, Edgeworth? Yes. He was going to be made chief anyway. Oh, God. Be careful when pointing that finger, or you might just wind up being the one who pointed at. So that means there's only one possible motivation for you to commit forgery. If you didn't do it for yourself, then you did it for someone else. For Lana? Don't be silly, Worthy. You know me better than that. There are only 3 people I look out for. Me, myself, and I. There. It's out in the open now. Aji, would you mind if I change my testimony a little? By all means, please do. I wouldn't be anyone else's accomplice if there wasn't nothing in it for me. What? Nothing in it for you? Sorry, but the only person I care about is yours truly. That girl, Lana's little sister, was it? If you think I felt sorry for her, you better think again. You're right. You don't feel sorry for anyone. Tough on crime and tough on people. That's how I was raised. You seem to be lax enough on yourself, though. Ho, ho, ho! Oh, that's a good one, Worthy. Could it be something in it for him? Given his selfishness, would he have helped someone out? I mean, no? No. Like, if he's really looking out for himself, then there's no possible way he would have helped someone. I can't think of how it would help him. That means he wouldn't have helped out anyone. Relax and take a deep breath, Mr. Wright. Try to think outside the box. After all, that's what you're good at, isn't it? Think outside the box. I never thought I'd hear him tell me that. Yeah, think outside the box. The question isn't who would the chief help. It's who would ask the chief for help. If someone did that, he'd be sure to find a way to benefit from that person. It appears the defense has nothing more to say. Chief, would you please repeat your testimony from the beginning? Well, jeez, dude. Gant isn't the one who murdered Prosecutor Marshall 2 years ago. Yet I know he played a part in the forgery. That can only mean someone asked him to be an accomplice. Damon Gant, someone's accomplice? That sounds unlikely. Wait a minute, am I supposed to point out an accomplice then? If that's the case, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then press that again. And yeah, we just go through the same song and dance again. Ho ho ho, yeah. Would he help someone out? Yeah. True, you might not help out anyone for their sake, but what if it would benefit you? But if it would benefit you, you might decide to assist someone. Mr. Wright, it appears you're positively determined to portray the chief as a nice man who likes to help people and who likes to lend people a hand. That's not what I mean. Very well then. Who is this person who would believe Chief Gant may help forge evidence? Like, okay, dude, let's be real. Let's be real. We probably knew this from, like, the beginning, dude. Like, Lana definitely would help out. Because, like, told us. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye, the defendant. I believe it's quite obvious in light of the circumstances. Emma Skye fell victim to an unfortunate series of events. Who would want to help out more than her own sister, Lana? And as for Chief Gant, he would have a reason to help Lana if she asked him to. That reason, of course, is self-profit. Self-profit? What do you mean? After the SL9 incident was resolved, Lana Skye was appointed chief prosecutor at the prosecutor's office. The person who arranged this job change was you, Chief Gant. But how would he profit from all this? To gain absolute control, he would be able to use the chief prosecutors as his puppet. Essentially, he would acquire unchecked authority over all investigations. Do you mean to tell me that despite the chief's formidable appearance, he plays with puppets? Oh wait, you must mean puppet as in someone forced to do bidding and blah 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 blah. Admit it, Chief. You assisted Lana Skye in forging evidence. Your motive? To appoint her as chief prosecutor so you can control her. Righto, my boy. You must have quite the imagination. Let me ask you something. What? Do you have any proof of this? That I controlled Lana? For example, is Lana testifying that I have done such a thing? Lana... She's keeping quiet to protect Emma. There's no way she'd testify against Gant. I'm afraid without any proof, this all amounts to nothing more than mere conjecture. Unless... that is also what happened in this incident. This incident? Which one would that be? Of course I'm talking about the murder of Detective Bruce Goodman. The chief prosecutor had been acting strange throughout this entire trial. Yeah, because she merely stabbed a body. It's almost as if someone had been controlling her. Yeah, again, she only stabbed a body. And yet, I think if our theory is correct, then Gant was really the one who murdered, you know, well, the unfortunate scene of events. Yeah, the unfortunate series of events that led to Neil Marshall's death was what caused, you know, Gant to order Lana to murder a dead body. Or something like that. Or maybe Gant murdered Goodman and then moved the body over there and then did the thing. Worthy, you better watch your tongue. I wouldn't want you to get hurt. Just what do you mean? What he means, Your Honor, is that Chief Gant is involved in the murder of Detective Goodman. Not only that, but the Chief is now making Lana to take the rap to cover up his involvement. What? Jeez. I said, oh dear! What is wrong with your people? Mr. Wright, you can't be serious! Huh? This is an affront to the highest ranking officer in our law enforcement agency. To accuse the chief of police of blackmail and murder? That's impossible! Seriously, why isn't the crowd, like, this loud for like, us accusing the chief for the murder and blackmail? That's inconsistent. That doesn't make any sense. Your Honor, I was merely what Mr. Edgeworth said in easier to understand language. Ha, ha, ha. It's too late, Mr. Wright. There's no turning back for us now. It looks like he's the one who's decided to go through with this. Can you prove this, Mr. Wright? That the chief, a high-ranking officer of the law, is involved in this murder? Good question. Regardless of his rank or title, Chief Gant is just a man. The question is he a criminal? I believe the evidence will tell. I see. Alright then. Oh, God. Ooh, God. Ooh. Ooh. Alright then. Let's see what Mr. Wright's got. And it better be good. Show us this evidence that ties Gant to the murder of Detective Goodman. It's gotta be the cloth, right? It's gotta be the cloth. Or maybe it's the jar again for some reason. I mean, the jar is just like... has been, like, everywhere. And we've already established that the thing says Emma on it. So, very clearly, it's just like... you know, that. Seriously, what does the screwdriver have to do with this? Like... I mean, it was brought to his office by the request of it, but why would it be... why would it be here? Like... could it really be either the screwdriver or the piece of cloth? Like... Jesus. Dude. I mean, it could... Wait a minute. Yeah. Wait a minute. The ID card record, probably. Because in the evidence room, let's take a look. Because 77777 was clearly, you know, the number of, you know, the chief, right? He went in there at 4:20, right? But to do what exactly? Like, that's really the only question that's unanswered here, isn't it? This is the ID card list. Yes, the one that shows who entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. There was one ID on the list we couldn't determine the owner of yesterday. 7. Sorry, but there's no way you can prove that's my card number. Oh, really? What? What? It's your number. What? How do you know that? The safe in Chief Gant's office requires a code to open. A 7-digit code. 7 digits? You don't mean... I'm afraid so, Your Honor. The code was 7777777. The same as the remaining ID card number on that list. Chief Gant, you entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. That's right, he did. Chief Gant, what do you have to say? Nothing. The defense's search of my office is in violation of regulations. And I will demand, Mr. Wright, to be punished to the maximum extent of the law. But right now, this court demands an explanation from you about the use of this ID card. Got him now, boys. How can you get around this? Chief Gant, so you admit it. You entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. But to do what exactly? What did he do? What about it? I'm the chief of police. Whatever in the evidence, whether it's the evidence room or the bathroom, what's the difference? I can go anywhere I want. Tell me. When you entered the room, were you alone? I always go to the bathroom alone, as I do with the evidence room. Detective Goodman wouldn't happen to be with you on that day, would he? Yeah, because... it could very well be that the chief and Goodman went together at the same time, but only Gant used his card. Of course not. Why would he be? I hadn't seen him in days. You hadn't seen him in days? Chief Gant, I'm afraid you just undone yourself. On that day, you've had to have met with Detective Goodman. What do you mean? This trial's purpose is to determine Lana Sky's guilt. No, it isn't, Your Honor. This trial's purpose is to determine the truth. If Chief Gant met the victim on the day of the crime, then we need to determine one thing. What transpired during that meeting? In that case, Mr. Wright, I'm going to have to ask you for evidence. Show us proof that the victim met with Chief Gant on the day of the crime. Really? Is this where finally the screw... Okay, like, okay, no, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about that. Like, so I'm thinking it might be only, like, because it couldn't possibly be the jar. Extremely thin rubber glove. Huh. Yeah, it shows proof that the victim went to the thing on the day of the crime. Okay, so my hunch is that it's either the Goodman's notes or like the switchblade knife, because it could have possibly been that, you know, the switchblade knife was used to, well, the thing. Oh, no, wait. 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 A handwritten document dated 12/2/21 can only be submitted to the chief of police. Yeah, only... Yeah, because Goodman had his ID card stolen. So... Yeah! Detective Goodman lost his ID card on the day of the crime. Or to be more accurate, Jake Marshall stole it. So Detective Goodman filled out a lost item report. He would have had to have given that report to the chief of police. Yet you are in possession of the report, which means you can't be sure if he filed it. Yeah, he tried to. He filed it. How do I know, you ask? Because he needed to enter the evidence room that day. He needed to? Yes, to transfer the evidence out. Oh. Detective Goodman took the form to you, Chief Gant. Then, you accompanied the detective to the evidence room. I accompanied him? There's no other way the murderer and the Goodman and the Goodman could have entered the room. Hold on. Let me guess what you're going to say next. I, the chief of police, murdered poor Goodman? Exactly. But wait! The chief didn't necessarily need to accompany him to the evidence room. He could have just lent him his ID card. Yes. Now that you mention it, I believe I might have done something of the sort. Really now? Sorry, but that's not possible. According to the record, the card was only used once. Yet you showed us your card earlier. If you really lent it to Detective Goodman, it would have been found on his body. Oh my god! Yo, that was fucking cool. Chief Gant, you didn't! He did! The murder was most likely in the spur of the moment crime, for no one in their right mind would have chosen the police department as a place to commit murder. After the murder, you contacted Lana at the prosecutor's office. Why? To dispose of Detective Goodman's body, of course. You're forgetting, Mr. Wright, that the victim's body was discovered in the prosecutor's office parking lot. How did he manage to move it there? I was in the police department the entire day, you know. And everyone's aware that Lana stayed at the prosecutor's office after the ceremony. Everyone except me, it seems. Still, you're the chief of police. You have an entire police force at your disposal. Oh, so you think I just ordered an officer to do it? Hey, you! Take this here dead body to the prosecutor's office. I don't think so. Chief Gant, you left all the evidence we need to prove how you moved the body to the prosecutor's office. And all this time, I thought it was just a useless clue that was taking up space. How could the chief have moved the body? Mr. Wright, show us this evidence. To move the victim's body, Chief Gant used this. Could this finally be the frickin' screwdriver, dude? Cause like I swear to God, dude, if this is actually it, like this was brought on the request, right? Because that's my hunch. That's finally what it is. This is how the thing moved the body. What's that? A screwdriver? But what does that have to do with this case? Mr. Edgeworth, think back to the day of the crime. What was the screwdriver doing here? It's here because... I was asked to go, by Chief Gant no less. He told me he wanted to keep it here in the prosecutor's office. It was tagged under a different case. Whoa! In any case, on the day of the stabbings, I brought this back here. It was tagged under a different case. After the ceremony ended that day, I didn't plan to return to the prosecutor's office. But you did, because Chief Gant asked you to. You mean The body was found in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. I think it's obvious what happened. The body was moved by that car. By the car? What? Detective Goodman's body was carried in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. Yes. Unless, of course, you have another explanation, Chief. Why else would you have asked Mr. Edgeworth to transport evidence from a closed case? There's only one plausible explanation. To transport the body to your accomplice, Miss Lana Skye. Bro, Sif! What's going on here? Yeah, exactly. Why are these juries still here? Is there no room for rebuttal into the defense's outrageous accusations? Think back to the photograph Miss Starr took at the prosecutor's office. This was not a photo of the body being stuffed in the trunk to be taken away. This is exactly the opposite. It is a photo of the body being taken from the trunk. Chief Gant, please say something. I believe... Your time's up. What? How? How? No! No! You're done! What do you mean? My time's up? Sorry, Wright, but I'm having lunch with the District Attorney General after this. We have to get going if we're going to make it in time for the early bird special. What are you? But the cross-examination hasn't finished yet. Remember what I told you earlier? A police chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal. Weapons? Like the right to refuse to testify. I'm invoking that right now. What? This is not a right that can be casually invoked. There are certain risks to be considered. So you're going to just run away after all this? Run away? Don't make me laugh, Worthy. Yeah, he's running. I stabbed old Goodman. That's what you're saying, right? If you had any conclusive evidence, you would have presented it by now. Well, You think I would have Lana dispose of the body? If so, then show me your proof and get it over with. I'll say it again, Mr. Wright. Damon Gant is the current chief of police. This court will not tolerate any accusations against him without concrete proof. Well, Mr. Wright? Your Honor? Do you have any concrete proof? Proof that Chief Gant murdered Detective Goodman and made Miss Skye dispose of the body? Do I have any concrete proof? What about the cloth, though? Like, that hasn't come into play as of yet. It was found in his safe. Like, what would it be, though? Like, really? What would it be? Like, jeez. Like, this could be like a really... Okay. So, do I have any concrete proof? Like, could it be that the evidence law or the cloth? It's like, I really gotta think this through, though. Like, before I even make a thing. Yeah, no, I can't really think of anything. It's like, I can look at this I can look at this. It's like, yeah, no, like, cause I've been thinking about this. Like, sure, like, we could present some evidence right here and we could all be fine, but like, No, I don't think we have any. I don't think so, at least. It's no use showing evidence that I'm not even sure of myself. No, Your Honor. At present, I have no conclusive evidence. Siaji? In that case, this court is forced to penalize you for your allegations against the chief. What? Here's a tip. Never gamble for what you can't afford to lose, Righto. It seems that Lady Luck is on my side again today. Okay, Aji. I'll leave the rest to you. Oh god, he's just gonna get away. I warned you earlier, Mr. Wright. This is an affront to us senior officers in our nation's law enforcement agency. Oh god. Oh, baby! Lady Luck, Maybe we should have a word with her. Mr. Edgeworth, what do you mean? There's one lady who knows the real truth behind this trial. We haven't yet had the honor of hearing her testimony. A lady who knows the truth. Another witness. In the absence of conclusive evidence, there's only one other method of proof is testimony. But Chief Gant has invoked his right to refuse to testify. There's still someone else. One more witness who can answer all the questions raised in this trial. Someone right in this very room. Mr. Edgeworth, who is this person? Why are you asking me, Your Honor? Have you forgotten? The defense is the one calling witnesses today. Mr. Wright, does such a witness exist? She may not be willing to tell the truth. We can't just stop now. Yes, Your Honor. We gotta do it. The defendant? Miss Lana Sky? She was in the underground parking lot at 5:15 on February 21st. Her task, to dispose of the victim's body. In accordance with a certain someone's orders. Mr. Edgeworth? The prosecution has no objections, Your Honor. Very well. This court will take its final recess for the day. Oh god, really? Another one? In 15 minutes, we will reconvene to hear the defendant's testimony. This court is now in Oh god, who? Please. Please, God. Who? Oh, what the frick, dude? Come on. Chief Gant, I thought you were going to eat. Listen good, Lana. He's talking to Lana. I don't think you need me to tell you this, but if you accept Mr. Wright's claims, there will be terrible consequences. Jesus. He's as good as telling us that. Why can't the court say this? That's right. Your sister will be found guilty for Neil Marshall's murder. This isn't good. Of course, you'd never support such outrageous claims anyway, right? So just something to think about. All right then. I've got a lunch date to meet. This guy's an asshole. He's... Okay, if there aren't any further objections, this court is now in recess, I guess. Jesus freaking Christ. Bro, everyone in that court heard him, right? He literally just did the villain thing where he's just like, yes, do not fail me, Lord Vader, or you will die. I am going to absolutely murder you in front of all this crowd if you don't do my orders, Lord Vader. I will shock your suit, and you won't be able to work anymore. Thereby, your life alerts will go off. I'm not even joking about that. His thing has a life alert system. Looks like we managed to stay in the game. Yeah, thanks to your help, Edgeworth. That chief, he's something else, eh, pals? Detective Gumshoe. I'm not a detective anymore. Aww. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Don't worry. I've already decided where to work now. At your... My office? Sure. I'll take the place of that top-knotted girl you used to work with. What do you mean? Maya? Still, it looks like we're all out of moves now. Chief Gant's done it again. How is it he's always getting us the upper hand? It's not fair that he has the right to refuse the right to testify. Settle down, Wright. Remember what the judge said? But Chief, it's not a right to be so casually involved. Yeah, you can't just do that without the consequences. Risks. What did he mean by that? It's simple. If the chief refuses to testify, the opposite also holds true. Ah, he forfeits the right to say anything. Oh, hey man, what's going on? Emma, are you okay? Yeah. When I came to, I was in the medical office. I'd been listening to the trial from the gallery. So, she heard everything that's been going on. Emma, I'm sorry about what I said before. No, don't be. It was the truth. You know, it's funny. I feel almost somehow relieved. Relieved? Yeah. Now that I finally know what really happened. To think that all this time, my sister was being blackmailed by that terrible man. And she did it all just to protect me. Ever since her appointment as chief prosecutor, everyone who knew her, said she changed. Perhaps it was easier that way for her. What do you mean? What do you think I mean? To follow Chief Gant's orders. She must have been shut herself up deep inside. To force herself to do anything and everything the Chief told her to do. That must be why she became so cold. It was all my fault. It's all because I murdered Mr. Marshall. Hey, don't go blaming yourself now. If you want to blame anyone, blame society, pal. Chief Gant may be able to fool anyone else with his forgery, but he can't fool my memory. I remember now. I knocked Mr. Marshall's into that armor. I see. Well, we better get back. It's time for the final act. Emma, why don't you wait here? No. I'm going with you. Yo, I want to be there when Lana tells the truth. Let's go, Wright. It's time to end this. That it is! Okay, so it's late at night, so I'm going to bed. So it's late at night when I'm recording this. It's almost like 1 a.m., dude. But next time will be it. Trial Ladder 2. This is it, Luigi. At an even episode 40, it'll be the end. See you guys on the next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.